Good morning to all of you out there on this lovely Saturday morning. Hello, hello, hello. Hang on, where is my chat here? There you go. So in any case, there it is. How is everybody doing? Paul Richard, you are first. Good morning, sir. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is that home project going? You know, the funny thing is that I almost said Chris Alexander. First of all, let's take a moment for everybody that's here, and let's come on, let's raise them up. So boom, boom, boom. What's in your hand this morning? Ooh, that doesn't sound good. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. What is in my hand? A guitar and a little breakfast drink with a little bit of espresso. Hello, hello, hello. In any case, it's going. Fix is in progress. Very good. So the funny thing is that Melissa, for those of you don't know, Mrs. Doppler, my most definitely better half, is still in Australia. So I kind of have been living, hanging out on my own. And so one of the shows that I'm kind of not really sanctioned to watch while she's home is Breaking Bad, because it's really, Breaking Bad. And so there's a scene, Paul, I didn't bother mentioning because it really, good, a little iced coffee. There you go. That's kind of what this is. There's a scene in Breaking Bad where the water heater has gone bad. So I saw the photo that you sent through, Paul, and totally reminded me of that. But being kind of a, I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, a semi-upstanding Christian guy, I was like, I probably shouldn't just say, hey, how about that scene in Breaking Bad, the movie about the guy that sells drugs and kills people? And I don't know, that seems to be somehow okay. I guess I just said it on a live stream, didn't I? Not good. In any case, reminded me of that, so there we have it. In any case, I am super excited to be hanging out with everybody here. Chris, you kind of came through with a really good point with one of your questions that you kindly sent through yesterday. There are times that all of us have time away from the instrument. And so given the way that kind of last week went, I wanted to kind of build upon the format of what we did there and build it out. One of the things that I'm learning about myself as I continue to learn about myself is that I love to teach. I love to have a concept and build upon that concept, but I find that I frequently find new concepts that I love to build upon. So I want to try and find a way of creating some structure with these shows, but not so much that it's crazy. Hello, Zach. Always a pleasure. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, Venice Beach. So one of the things that I really want to do, and so one of the things that, again, as you self-analyze and kind of go, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the things that we do that are good repetitively, and what are the things that we do that are okay repetitively, and what are the things that we repetitively do that maybe could use some behavior modification. So one of the conversations Melissa and I have is frequently I'll announce, oh, this person's in the band, or I'm doing this course material, or that. So what I'm not going to announce is that I'm working on a pentatonic course, because I'm not going to announce it. But in the process of not announcing that I'm not working on a pentatonic course, I can tell you I've spent a prolific amount of time practicing, and I've had 3 major revelations that I want to share with you before we get to a little bit of Q&A. The other thing is that I, as humbly as I can do it, because it sounds on the surface not as humble as the heart is behind it, but I've had my students start creating what we affectionately refer to as the Doppler dictionary. And that is because there's elements around music. Kevin Wayne Carr, hello. Good to see you, my friend. Hello, hello, hello. I don't know why I'm saluting. I guess it's my D-Day continued. I don't know. By the way, did any of you see all the servicemen that they kind of wheeled out? It was very sad because all of them kind of got wheeled out in the wheelchairs, but the original D-Day fighters, like fighting for the American way of life, and I was watching one on TV and I was saluting, so maybe that's why I'm saluting today or something. But I was really moved. I was like, there was a time where people cared more about the common good than their own little deal, and they were willing to put everything on the line. I was pretty inspired. These old guys, it was pretty awesome to just see them. In any case, it was inspiring. I digress. Salutes to all the people that have fought for this country and for the freedom that we have that is so frequently grossly utilized. Leave it there. All right. So, 3 things: noodling, practice. Oh, look at that. It's almost like a perfect W. All right, there we go, like that. Woodshedding. So what I want to talk to you about is woodshedding. And we'll get to some Q&A. Kind of, this whole kind of last time we spent some time with acronyms and all of that. But I want to get right to the heart of the matter with Chris's question, which was like, he was talking about, when you've been away, because Chris has been in California on vacation, when you're away from the instrument, how do you kind of jumpstart the practice and the playing process? And it is something that I think many of us have in common, and I want to speak to it in the framework of the W, the mighty woodshed. Because the interesting thing about woodshedding is the outgrowth, not of noodling. Like, and the analogy of noodling is you kind of get the minor pentatonic and you're like, and it's not, there's kind of advanced noodling, but it always kind of just doesn't have an end versus practicing. And then out of the outgrowth of practicing, you all of a sudden start using that practice to start building licks. And then you're woodshedding those licks, and you're wheelie, and all of that. And in the framework of that, the end goal of the woodshedding is that we want to be able to drop that into different songs that we're soloing over. And as I've been kind of not working on this pentatonic program, one of the things that I am not thinking about is how do you show people how to solo? Like, hey, Braden, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Hello, hello, hello. So how do you show people how to solo? It's a really interesting thing. So, and the outgrowth of the woodshedding part of this, and the heart of the matter is with Chris, hopefully the takeaway is going to be like, okay, if there are 3 main phases to guitardom, there's the noodling, which is kind of, again, you kind of start with tapping. We're going to do a little tapping thing later. There's the initial phase of it. That's what I'm going to call noodling for right now, because you're just kind of like, I don't know. It doesn't really seem to have a point versus practicing. Getting it on your fingers, and then we start kind of outworking the different ideas, and you kind of go, oh, okay, that could be cool, right? So with the specific mindset, and this gets back to this Doppler dictionary, it all kind of makes sense in my mind, is that when we really think about the word, hey, Mario, what's going on? Good morning. Oh, I love that. Good morning to me and to the chat. Hats off, my man. I want everybody to really ruminate on this woodshedding thing because, as I alluded to last, oh, Phil, hey, I missed you. Hey, good morning, sunny and soon to be hot in Texas. Like Doug's hot licks. Thanks so much, my friend. So many of us have had a season way, way, way back when. Hello, Adam. Great to see you. Hello, 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 hello. Now, hang on a second. Great to see you. Hang on. I've got this comment here that I want. 2 types of pentatonic scales, those with semitones and those without, and hemitonic. Hemitonic. So I get to add a word to my vocabulary because I did not know hemitonic. All right, so I love this. I love it. 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 So boy, if you're gonna, I'm gonna attempt to not to take all that bait, but I will say this. One of the things about soloing and woodshedding is that the idea of the woodshed licks is that we take our practice with the goal of being able to then practice certain riffs and licks and riffage and things that we kind of get whatever our shred is, we get that on. Darren Mill, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We get this going so we can employ these things. We can put them into process. And that woodshedding process where we're kind of really getting, our guns pumped up. So how the heck do we do that? And what do we need to be thinking about it? And as Chris, per Chris's point, when we're out of that space, how do we get back into it? which gets me to the larger point. Many of us, myself included, as I'm kind of self-analyzing, one of my students, Bob, was commenting. That as he heard me showing him that little actually, James Knox, good morning, sir. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing you in July, my friend. As I was doing that, he made this comment. He said, that reminded me of when I studied with you 20 years ago and I came up to the store early and you were there just shredding away. And to me, it reminded me of something that my student Matt King said that I reminded him of. And it happened like within a day. So when those things kind of happen, somebody knocks on your door and says something that you've heard kind of that echoes that, you kind of go, I need to pay attention to this. And Matt said, I said something to him that reminded him of his younger self. Mark, what's going on? Great to see you. I've been hanging out in Boogie Land thinking about you, my man. I trust you're doing great. It has been a minute, but always just a minute with you. Great to see you. I was thinking about you the other day, my friend. And I was actually thinking about your wall chart. So I'm going to take a quick left turn here and encourage each of you to take something from Mark's book. Mark has a big, kind of one of those big posters just to the left of where his music table is, as I recall. And I encourage you guys to put some sort of piece of paper or something that just you write, or some mode shapes or something up, or some pentatonic shapes right up where you see it on a daily basis. So it just kind of reminds you of something positive. I'm going to tie all this in. So my student Matt said that I somehow reminded him of how he, there's an era for many of us that are older players that we kind of had a moment of discovery. And that initial moment is, if you could liken our experience as a guitar player to a balloon, where the balloon kind of gets blown up for the first time. You kind of go, I'm a balloon, as strange as that sounds. But the point being is there's that feeling like you kind of pushed back on the universe and kind of went, this is my expression as a guitar player. And I reminded him and connected him with that same person. And the same thing, that same thing happened as Paul kind of pulled me back to, or sorry, Paul, not Paul, my student, Bob, pulled me back to that moment of being in the store. And I remembered old woodshedding. Doug, and as I've been kind of sitting with or not sitting with the pentatonic, the practicing evolves into woodshedding. And I kind of went, I'd forgotten. And as I alluded to last week, there are many of us that had these intense practice periods, but most importantly, these woodshedding periods that we could erroneously believe because we did that in the past. We don't have to do that now. And I think last week I said something the equivalent of, if you want to play like you did then, you got to do the things you were doing then. So I kind of went, I guess I should be taking my own advice. And so the idea is, if you have a period in the past where you're like, man, I was inspired and I was doing things, what were the things that you were doing that led to that, and start doing them. And if you haven't done those things, that's what we're here to help with, or to kind of get people jump started, like with Chris. So first of all, one of the things that when I have made the mistake of kind of getting out of the groove, I'll find a couple of pieces of music that I feel inspired to play along with, and I will play along with them. It's a great way to kickstart your musical energies and just kind of get the blood flowing, right? Something that kind of goes, oh, okay. And here's the thing is, like, there's that feeling of, oh, I'm going to bounce into the walls a little bit. That actually happens, but that's okay, where you're kind of getting your sea legs back. So that's an important part of the process. Oh, Zach, you were baiting my hook in the worst way. I love that. Okay. So we're going to take a moment. I think what we're going to do is we're going to interject the triviosity. So Zach, and if I asked this last week, hang on, I think I should have it in my notes, because I should have it in my notes, but I might have asked it before. There we go. You know what? I'm just going to ask it anyway. No, I did ask this before. So what makes the minor pentatonic scale minor? And most people would say it is a flat 3. And although that is partially correct, that is what we call a smart mistake. What the hell is a smart mistake? Again, Doppler dictionary smart mistakes are like, hey, we got, I think I mentioned this last week, and this is my favorite one for smart mistakes, is we're in the key of E major, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. We're at E, we're going backwards, and if we didn't know that the notes were E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, or another way is 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half, as in E, hold to F sharp, hold to G sharp, half to A, hold to B, hold to C sharp, hold to D sharp, half to E, and going backwards, E half to D sharp, hold to C sharp, hold to B, hold to A, half to G sharp, hold to F sharp, hold to E, that's a D sharp. Well, if you were going backward, you go, if that's E, I guess the note downhill from E, that must be an E flat. Although that's wrong, there's kind of good logic. We think flat is lower, sharp is higher. So some way, if that's E, that must be an E sharp. It's like, no, that's actually an F. And the idea is every time you move up or down a half step or a whole step, you add an additional note name. And that's really, if you're looking for some way to kind of make sense of all of this, the smallest distance between any adjacent notes is a half step. That is, say, based on the major scale. The largest distance is a whole step. So if it's larger than a whole step, then there's got to be some note in between. All right. So that is to say, if, for example, I'm at F, is that a G sharp or an A flat? I know people here will have accidentally said that's an A sharp. But again, if that's F and the note we're going to is bigger than a half step or a whole step, in this case a step and a half, then there's got to be some middle note name that we have to leapfrog over, which is why it's F. We skip kind of our G note because this note right here is a step and a half above, so that makes it A flat. Because that was F, G, A flat, or F, G flat, A flat. Either way, when we go a step and a half, it's a step and a half or a half and a step, implying there's some middle note that we have to kind of pull out of the equation to be able to go, that's some sort of F note, that's some sort of A note, moving on. All right. The point being is being able to navigate that stuff is super important. As we look at the minor pentatonic, for example, and I will take the bait here. The important thing with the minor pentatonic is to see that minor pentatonic the next smart mistake is thinking the minor pentatonic must be based on the minor scale. One of my students said that to me this week. Smart mistake. Kind of right, but kind of wrong. So if we were to talk about each of these 7 modes as in major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, minor, locrian, major, take my word for it, the only modes that have a 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, which take my word for it is the formula of the minor pentatonic, are Dorian, Phrygian, and minor, which means if you got a Dorian progression, minor pentatonic. You've got a Phrygian progression, preferably one that's in tune. You can play the minor pentatonic. Minor. So the point being is you can play the minor pentatonic over the Dorian, Phrygian, and minor. So that's one of the magic things about the minor pentatonic. The major pentatonic, hello, hello, hello. The happy major pentatonic scale. Has a 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and a 1 again. Beautiful scale, and the other thing you can do, just for pisses and giggles, over the top of the major pentatonic, you can do what I call the mixo-octatonic scale. What then? Basically, it's a 1, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 7, 1. Basically, combining the minor pentatonic and the mixolydian and the mixo-octatonic scale. Basically, it's a mixed linear scale with a flat 3 and a natural 3. So it's got that 2, flat 3, 3 in the 4. Now, in terms of the learning to solo bit, how do you teach people how to solo remotely? And it's like, you know what, I can do this. So one of the things that people have a really hard time with is like, okay, I get, like, I don't want to just kind of aimlessly noodle. You know, I want to practice, all right? First and foremost, 4, 2, 1. I got to be really careful. 4, 2, 1. No. 1, 4, 2, 1. There we go. 4, 2, 1. So, you know, what the heck is 4, 2, 1? Great question. Well, the concept is how do you kind of build? Because the thing about the pentatonic, since we seem to be talking about it, and I will probably be talking about it a fair amount, and I'm spending a lot of time really kind of, you know, when I was but a wee lad, kind of all I really knew was the pentatonic. So in many ways, the music that I'm writing and playing, although there is some mode stuff going on, a lot of it is kind of pentatonic-y, kind of... Pentatonic bass, with a couple of other. But most of it is kind of pentatonic-y. Shane, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Hello, hello, hello. So part of that is just getting muscle memory in place. And getting the guitar in tune. So the deal is this concept of 4-2-1 is one of the techniques that I'm employing in the practice phase that's really speaking to my woodshedding phase. And they go hand in hand, of taking some group of things 4 times, then 2 times, then 1 time. One of the things that I'm working on actively is these groups of 4 notes. Oh, sorry. Here's my 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Such that as you kind of start subtracting the repetition, your fingers kind of go, oh, okay. It's you're kind of pulling some of the air out of the room, if you will. But it's teaching the fingers, if you do it at a slow enough tempo, to kind of be able to go, got it. And we're building one of the really important elements of this, regardless of whether it's shred. Which is muscle memory. 90% of playing fast is just your hands having done stuff enough times right that they just play it right, because it's like that's all they know how to do. So that gets into a couple of things that I'm kind of having my students add to the Doppler dictionary, which I will encourage you to start your own version of. One of which is called golden tempos, and I may have mentioned it last week, but you'll hear me talking about a lot. A golden tempo. What in the world is a golden tempo? So if you think about my analogy for the weekend, and I'm going to probably use it for a while, dribbling a basketball. I was never a particularly athletic kid, as much as I wished I could have been. I wasn't. But I can dribble a basketball. And if you gave me a basketball today, although it's been rather a while, I could still dribble it. That muscle memory is ingrained in my body. I know how to do it. I'm not Harlem Globetrotter, so I can't do that. But if I practiced long enough, I probably could get there. No, let me rephrase that. Would be able to get there. And that is the whole thing about a golden tempo. A golden tempo is the tempo at which you can dribble the ball and gonna go, I got this. It may not be Harlem Globetrotters, but one of the things that I said last week that I want to share with you again, and I'll say it repeatedly moving forward, we're looking for excellence and not perfection. Many of us have struggled with unobtainium perfectionism. You're just never going to get there. And I will say, without mentioning any names, I had the privilege of being in the studio with one of the world's greatest guitar players, watching them record. And, they actually took a little bit of something that had been recorded and just moved a little bit in the timeline. I just kind of looked over and it's like, you mean you don't play it perfectly every time? And they kind of looked at me and gave me one of those looks, what, are you new? And I went, oh. So I've been holding, kind of my imaginary self, because I can't play perfectly, to an unobtainable standard that even the greatest players in the world aren't perfect as much as our perception might be. I kind of went, oh, wow, okay, we can burst that bubble and move on. So, finding, the idea is, what does excellence look like for us? So, I can encourage you, maybe what you might write on that piece of paper is excellence, not perfection, because that really allows a lot of us to kind of go, many of the people that I know through teaching and through doing these sorts of things and whatnot, I think we all struggle with this battle of, I should be better than I am, versus like, I am where I am, so I should be better at being good with myself about this. So the giving yourself permission to be human is probably a really good idea. And it also makes it a lot more fun. I'm all about having fun. Generally, I'm really privileged in that pretty much most of what I get to do is around music and having fun. So, you know, it's pretty cool. So try not to do the things that take the fun out of having fun. And so this whole thing about the 4-2-1 thing is you can apply it to anything. So the other thing I want to do is I said I was going to talk a little bit about tapping. If you were to take the G major 3-note per string mode, which, take my word for it, is a bunch of G's, A, B, C's, D's, E's, F sharp, and G's, as in G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, so on and so forth, and you would have... Well, one thing about just purely build, before we add the right hand, purely building the muscle memory. Most people are better at either legato, that is to say, where the notes kind of have this flowing sort of vibe versus that really tight alternate picking business. So, you know, for some of you, Zach, I love you. I love you because you're going to pull me right in. I love that. I will revisit all this. I love it. All right, so the thing about these scales is that for people who are wanting to get either the legato better or their alternate picking better, this is where this 4-2-1 business really helps, because people get in the habit of running through these things all the way to top to bottom, and quite often the problem is in some middle note or some middle pair. So if, for example, the transition is you're kind of going from John Mello, good morning, my friend. If you're going from the third to the second string, that little transition right there, it's got a little bit of this kind of leapfroggy deal because the second string is detuned a half step compared to the others. So to kind of take these fingerings that arguably are based on strings tuned in fourths, to continue that up, we always have to make that little hand shift there with these modes as we're playing the 3-note per string mode. So that right there is a sticky spot. So that's a really great place to employ a 4-2-1. So I'm going to go, let's see. For example, all right, so I'm going to take not just that pair of strings, I'm going to include them in a grouping of that right there. And I'm going to go, up and down, right. Fours. You're doing in pairs, there was 4 times. Twos. And ones. Sorry. And that sort of methodology really works well. You can also... sorry. So on and so forth. I need to slow that one down right there. So very clearly my legato is a little bit better. So the idea... Watch out for those open. So those noises, and what's great about targeting and isolating this with the 4-2-1 thing, you heard when I left the third string. That allows you to kind of just zero in on that pair of strings going, oh snap, when I leave the third string and go back to the second string, I'm getting that little unwanted pull off. That's happening when you're doing the larger run, but because it's going by fast enough, you might not necessarily know it, as when you're drilling down. You heard it there. So that's why hanging out there is good. Sorry. I didn't do it there. Then the ones. And that concept will follow you through there. So. Fours, twos, and ones. It's a great way to get things underneath your fingertips. That one I probably should have started it slow. So again, this concept about golden tempos. It's a tempo. That you can play it out, but you got to focus on the dribbling enough. So on and so forth. But that's a great way of getting that kind of underneath your fingertips. So getting back to this thing, and Shane, I see your question there. Taking there's a certain amount of woohoo in and out. Woohoo, I don't know what that is. When you're going through, when you're doing foursies, that transition between the last four and the first four of, that's this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last of that and the first of that are that subdivision, right? So if I go 4, just on those two strings, 4, 2, and 1. Sorry, one more time. Right, so I'm going to loop it. That's a great exercise to kind of get that nice and tight. So all right, so the idea, now we're going to take this guy. And we're going to add with 4, 2, and 1. F sharp. All right, so that was kind of it's like kind of once you get going, that's a little bit of what the woodshed process is about. You're like, okay, we were just kind of quote unquote practicing. I was like, hey, let's move on. And you kind of go, well, what if I do a backtrack? What if I go 3 strings? Sorry. And know the notes. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is kind of cool. That is the difference between practicing and woodshedding, because you kind of go, oh, I'm starting to spitball this stuff together. So the idea is it somehow kind of is that halfway point between soloing and practicing, and that's where the fun really happens. So that 4-2-1 bit, you're going to hear me talk about that a lot more. Technical question on locking trems. Do you keep stock trems on your guitars? My Ibanez trem stays in tune for 20 minutes. My Parchcaster Floyd is still in tune 5 years later. Okay. There we go. Okay, so Edge 2 on one. The other is a 2009 RG, so I'm not quite sure on one. So the RG is going to be a low pro Edge. And so the Edge 02, I do not know for a fact, but one of the reasons they call the original Edge and the low pro Edge the Edge is that there is a replaceable knife edge. That is to say, the bit that fits against those two studs there, I should say, that is a knife edge. And basically, like the webbing of my fingers here, there you go, that sits against the post or a stud. And so what begins to happen is it wears, just like if you were to kind of put your guitar pick into that webbing, it starts to flatten out and develops two edges. So instead of coming to a point, it comes to kind of 2 points, if you will, a flat spot and 2 points, and it will sit at either one of those. Hence, it will be a downward or upward spot. So that means that the knife edges have worn out. More often than not, the bridge, that knife edge that's on the bridge, sometimes like the Edge, they're replaceable, and sometimes on a traditional Floyd, they're not. That's one of the great things about those low pro Edge and the original Edge bridges, is that those edges were replaceable. I'm 90% positive that on the original Edge they were. I know for a fact on the low pro Edge they are. And on cheaper bridges, they're not. And so the reason it doesn't stay in tune is because those guys develop those two spots on there, a down spot and an upward spot. The workaround, for one, is that once those knife edges wear out and you can't replace them, which is the majority of the tremolos that are out there, you decide whether you want to keep the bar in the lower position or the upper position. That is, say, you push the bar down, you tune the guitar. Every time you kind of flog on the bar, you give it a little push and keep it in the downward position after you're done flogging, even if you can pull up. I'm going to get to the set position in a moment. Conversely, you could put it in the upward position, so that when you're done, you give it a little tug up. The challenge with that is, with the tuggy version, is every time you do a major bend, it will probably pull it back down into the lower position. So ultimately, regardless of kind of what state of submission my tremolo is in the process of being put to, downward spot, kind of, that is, say, I almost always will give it a little gentle, that kind of little at the end, just pushing it into the downward spot to just help keep the thing in tune. And that is the trick with that. The guitar that is behind me there you go, hold on, come on, there we go. That guitar, for better or worse, the FRX tremolo that's on there, it's a Floyd Rose tremolo, but it's a top-mounted tremolo. I could literally put it on this SG and do, wait for it, no routing, which I flippin' love. So the thing about that is that it doesn't have the springs to kind of create, there's a big giant spring on it, but it doesn't have the three, which is I usually go for 3 springs in the back, usually. That is, say, on the back of a tremolo, there may be some people watching that don't actually have a tremolo guitar, maybe never have. Although it's entirely probable that everybody here has got an old school guitar with a floating tremolo on it, but just in case there's somebody that doesn't. Do I have it? No, I don't. All right, well, that's fine. Here we go. All right, so, and you've opened a great can of worms here. You go over there, thank you. All right, so basically you've got your stock Strat. And we got our Kramer here. And we got more guitars than we got space for, but this is me having fun, so this is us playing with Hot Wheels, right? So let's see here. There we go. Come on. Sorry about that. Fine. All right. So the deal is with this old. I was talking about that last little. The last thing I'll do, I may not give it an actual kind of, but even though I'm rocking the bar, the last thing I'll do will be a dip. And I can get away with it. And crazily enough, you can kind of do this trick with the bar. It magically kind of pulls the guitar in tune. This guitar does have a little issue. The high E string. Hey, Phil, hang on just 1 second. There we go. Wish your son a very happy 13th birthday for us. Awesome, Phil. Thanks so much for hanging out. All right, hey, what's going on? The Dundane, the Dundane, Dunedane. Dude, this one's guitar just killer. Oh, tone control. I've gotten very used to playing Gibson scale, so I kind of went up for the octave, and I was like, I didn't quite make it. Just by the way. All right, trivia. Not everybody at once. What is the scale length for Fender instruments? Not everybody at once. Hang on. Oh, wait. Oh, I missed some comments. Matt King. Hey, baby. How you doing? Oh. 25.5. 21.75. What is the scale length for Gibson instruments? very much. 24 3/4, also known as 24.75. All right, so the funny thing is Matt was having a guitar that was doing the tuning thing earlier. All right, so I kind of hung out in Stratland here for a minute because this guitar has got, it's not doing it now, of course, which is kind of funny. If I were recording something, of course, it would be the bar, when I use it, makes the high E string go sharp. I don't quite know why that's a thing, but some Strats do that. But considering how much I was flogging on this thing, it really shouldn't be in tune, but it... Alright, let's switch guitars. So this guy right here is more traditional locking fine-tuning tremolo with what is probably the original Floyd Rose on it. And this tremolo has been used and abused in good ways. I love this guitar, by the way. It's a very pretty guitar. I think Gary and I... No, that's right. When I bought it, it had one cream and another slightly mismatched cream mounting ring. And I think he swapped out, he either had another one that was roughly the same color, or we put on a pair of matching cream rings. But I think it really kind of makes the pickups pop. Tuner. So the deal is that with these old school Floyds in particular, that what will happen is that as the bridge begins to wear out, the knife edges on the bridge, which are not replaceable, they just kind of give up the ghost from excessive flogging. And what ends up happening, let's see if... yeah, I can show this to you. So let's see if you can see that right there. Okay, so that right there, in the downward position, that's where that is. In the upward position, a little sharp. Lower position, right there. So it means that when I use the bar on this one, and I finish whatever I do, there'll be a last, either a purposeful where it's noticeable, or and the last thing, I'll do is give it a gentle. So that's saying I'm doing this rocking vibrato with the bridge. I'm literally taking the note and and particularly in an instance like that, the last thing will be. Whenever I do it'll always end with a little dip to kind of pull the guitar back into tune. Again, there's the downward spot and the upward spot, and once these guys begin to wear out, just pushing it to the downward spot. The other thing, Shane, just for anybody, Stanley, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Boom, there's nothing like that autocorrect. I've only seen that a few million times. I know that people know my name is not Doe. In any case. All right, so here's the thing. The tuning of these guys, when you're changing strings, I almost always will just go from low E string to high E string, one string at a time. I don't pull all the strings off there. I am a big fan, and I'm going to do a video sooner than later. And I'm really glad you asked this, Shane, about changing strings on a locking fine tuning tremolo. As a matter of fact, I've already had this internal conversation with myself. Do I call it a locking tremolo and then put in parentheses Floyd Rose, Ibanez Edge, so on and so forth, per the search query on YouTube, because YouTube is really a giant video search engine when used that way. So the point being is it's going to be talking about all the nuances of this and the fact that the tremolos do sit at two spots once they start to get worn. The great thing again about the low pro edge is that you used to be able to, and I'm pretty sure post-pandemic, you still can buy those knife edges that you can literally, you take the bridge off, you pull the knife edge out, you put a new one in. It's flipping genius. It's really smart. You know, most companies would be like, oh, we're just going to make you buy a new bridge. You know, as opposed to like, hey, we're going to solve a problem that's everybody's problem. It's pervasive. So, that said, just a quick tip here. Another issue for people is what's happening with the nut. Whenever, yeah, you know, Do I not have one in this room? One of the things that I did was I've been organizing my studio, and although I do have a drawer for my pencils and my scissors, and my tape measure actually has a place that it lives, my Sharpies aren't there. What I would suggest doing is on your locking nuts, on one side or the other of each of the three locking nuts, putting a little dot with your Sharpie, as long as you don't mind putting a little dot, or perhaps on the underside, maybe an arrow pointing which way it is, because what begins to happen is those the clamps begin to wear out, and generally, as long as you have the clamp turned in the right direction, it will provide enough grip. Eventually, you want to swap them out, but they have a really good life. Even when they start to get worn, they still have a tendency to grip, because what kind of wears them out is the gripping down. You'll see the indentation of the low E string versus the A string. You'll notice that the one where the low E string is will have a bigger indentation, even though it brings it down. As it starts to do that, it seems to kind of show the size of that E string versus the size of the A string. You always want to make sure that's turned in the same direction. So I'm very careful not to flip those around. So if you're not being careful in doing that, that's one of the biggest problems that you can easily fix. And if they are in fact worn out, then just replace those. So if it looks like the E side and the A side are the same size in terms of what's worn out, it means they've been flipped around. Get rid of that and replace them. In terms of this, I just go low E string to high E string. I always tune from low to high. One of the things that I was talking about this with my buddy, Matt King. Hang on a second. Hey, go do dad duties, Matt. Always a pleasure, my dear friend. Matt's a great guitar player, in case you haven't heard him. Always a pleasure, my friend. All right, so James, hey, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Hello, 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 hello. Jerry, what's happening, my man, my man? So one string at a time, I stretch the daylights out of my strings. I've got a little table over that I use, but what I will do is I will tension the string between my thumb and my first finger like so, and my thumb and first finger like so, and I'll go along the length of the string, tensioning about that much, so you can kind of see that I've got it like that, and then I'll flip it around like that, and I will do that a bunch. Usually 10-ish times, and I'll also kind of do that and make sure that the string is kind of stretching in the area beyond the nut there. That way the entire string is stretched, and I am I went to a fault of one way or the other of keeping the strings sounding as bright and as spanky and as tight as I could, or overstretching them a little bit, I'll purposely overstretch them a little bit because when I'm changing strings, it's almost always to either record or to play live, and in neither of those instances do I want to be out of tune. So for that reason, I will purposely take a little bit of the life out of the strings to make sure that they stay in tune. In tune, out of tune. In tune. Zach, I am planning to install a neck with a locking nut on a Floyd Rose bridge. There is an unlocking nut available that has to be installed. So, it's an interesting thing. So there were various versions of the kind of the finger-tight Floyds, right? So I would, given the choice, we've gone through a bunch of stuff with that guitar there. And as much as it's, I've got a broken string on it, which is one of the reasons I'm not playing it today. The other thing is about that SG, I think it's got 11s on it. And the guitar that I took with me to Australia has got 10s on it. And my main guitars, I set up. Spencer, what's going on? I overslept. Great to see you, my dear friend. Hold on. There we go. Let's try that again. My main guitars I put with these great Dunlop strings. They're basically heavy core. It's a 9 through 42 with the bottom 3 strings are their heavy core. So it's a heavier core with which the winds are wound around. And the reason I like that is you can play chords and dig in a little bit more, and they don't go when you hit them hard. And also, for those of us that are sensitive to the width of the string with the pick, especially on the bottom strings, you can definitely feel the difference in 10s. You can definitely feel the difference in 11s. The thing that's happened, as I've discovered, is that one of the things that I do when I'm out, quote unquote, on the road, which at this point is these little bursts, especially when Melissa isn't there. This happened at a show in Texas in particular, where I'll wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm like, I want to practice. And I kind of started hitting the right hand really, really light. Traditionally, I'll hit harder. That is a versus. And I just kind of was. And I found that when I played super light like that, because I was super, super light with the right hand, I was like, oh, I can play a lot faster. Because there's just a little, and I'm generally, even when I'm playing with, that extra velocity, the right hand is still loose. It's just that I'm just a little bit tighter with it, but with the really soft picking, it's super, super loose. So as an end result, playing heavier strings, it's very difficult to manhandle as you kind of go up and down the neck with, by the way, this is a term in the Doppler dictionary, the lawnmower effect. That is to say, you're kind of... You're kind of mowing those notes up and down the neck. When you get up here on 11s, like, those strings are very unforgiving. And so what I found is the softer pick attack actually makes it much easier to play fast, which has been kind of one of the reasons I'm playing much softer with my right hand and just kind of going, okay, so that is to say the instrument continues to teach me things, which I love. So as an end result, kind of that, those little moments of practice, and they are, the funny thing is I hadn't had the revelation of the difference between noodling, practicing, and then woodshedding, and that concept that the woodshedding is the outgrowth of like serious practice. I'm like, ooh, okay. Again, that 4-2-1 business, Sorry, 2, 3, 4. That is to say, I'm hitting each spot once and then going to its neighbor. Sorry. So the idea is you could loop it. So on and so forth. Is that I'm going to do it for these first two spots, ascending and descending, just to kind of truncate it. 4s, 2s, and 1. 4, 2, 1. And that, like that will just transform your project like flippin' A. Because it really informs you, and again, when you talk about this concept of a golden tempo, it's a tempo. You can play that. Oh, sorry. Oh. Something like that. All right. So the idea is just being able to loop that stuff, and it's just intoxicating. I cannot get enough of it, and I just love playing. I love practicing, and then I love the woodshedding because it's kind of crossed that line. Because in it, oh sorry. So right. So you now all of a sudden have a lick. Okay. I love that. Oh, my favorite question in the world. Not my favorite, but one of my favorites. It's a great question. Dunlop, 1mm, Tortex. $45 years. Same pick. Almost invariably the same pick, 45 years. Just standard. Hey, Brett, what's going on? Oh, holy cow. Yeah, I bet. I can imagine. Oh, that's awesome. Wait, so do you live in L.A.? Or were you in L.A. just to, whatever? Killer. Great to see you, by the way. Sounded great in the Vi video, by the way. There was a happy birthday video for Mr. Vi. And Brett played a solo on that. What do you have to search? Vi 64th birthday. No, I flew down for you. That's what I thought. I didn't think you were in L.A. Real music fans will fly for a show. The perfect pick. So one of the things, and I can't talk about that. Remind me. No, I can't even talk about that. There are a couple of things that are happening in the background here that I can't talk about, so I can't talk about it. So just remind me later to talk more about the guitar picks, and I can speak to that. But for me, I've used a 1mm. This would normally be blue, but it's a custom pick that says, well, DD 2023. You need to get new picks, and the new ones will still say louder is better because louder is better. But the idea is it means I could walk into virtually any music store anywhere in the world and I can find my pick if by chance, I don't know, I run out. I have a drawer in my rack, which I've actually taken out for the time being, that has a bag of them. I always carry, in my little pick pocket. They're buried in there, but there's a little. I can't get them all out. It's usually easier to get out one, but there's got picks, right? And the thing about it is that it is the standard shape. So I know there are going to be some jazz 3 players out there. Andy Timmons, I believe. Well, I know for a fact Andy Timmons is, and some of John Petrucci's picks are around a jazz 3 size, but he has some picks that are slightly different sizes as well. But there's a bunch of people that love the jazz 3 picks. I personally love the traditional Fender shape. It's the very first guitar I had was a Fender Jaguar, and I opened up the case and there were some original Fender picks in there. I'm like, I don't know, I'll use that, right? And so that pick, in many ways, the sound of rock guitar as we know it is played with this pick shape. So I love that question. So that's a funny thing. When I went to Australia, I think I took because it was a frantic rush to get out the door, so I had this list of things to bring, and I brought 5 guitar picks. And by the time we got to the end of the trip, I was down to about 2, one of which was getting progressively more worn. So one of the great things about the Tortex pick, unlike a traditional Fender pick, is that you really got to go out of your way to wear this thing down. They will wear down, especially if you're playing a larger string like a 10 or an 11 that has a more enunciated groove, if you will, because of the winds. So I'd worn those down pretty well. One in particular, but I was like, I'm not throwing it away because that's one of my last 2 picks that I know where they are. There was probably a third floating around in a pair of pants. But aside from that, I'm very conscious of the fact that I've got the same pick. Again, I can walk into any music store. It's the 1mm Tortex, which is traditionally blue. That said, when I'm in the studio, I love this little plate, pick plate. I got this up in the Sierras, and I was like, oh, I love that. Work hard, stay humble. I have this, and then there is I actually know where they are. Give me a moment. Can I get to this without destroying a guitar? Come on. You down here. There we go. A giant bag filled with every size, shape, color, thumb pick, you name it, it's in here. Because each one of these picks, for example, let's exemplify that. Listen to the sound of the attack. The way the pick gives and doesn't give is a very important part of that literal tactile transition of what's happening in your hand through the pick to the string. So for me, because I use a the attack of the pick needs to be relatively consistent to the a little bit different in texture, but you can still hear they sound pretty similar. So if I used a softer pick, at least in this kind of, after 45 years, you can hear the change in tone. I like the way I've kind of learned to match my fingers to what's going on there. But the texture of the pick really matters. The Tortex is a firmer pick, even at kind of, if you will, a heavy pick. Steve and Joe both use the same shape pick. I think Joe and Steve both use a slightly thicker. The last Vi picks I had were a true extra heavy. The last Satriani picks that I had were halfway between a heavy and an extra heavy. I still have somewhere around some of the old picks from surfing era and whatnot, and those were just more of a traditional Fender, whatever the material, fake tortoiseshell. Actually, no, those were plasticine, whatever they were, but they feel more like a traditional Fender pick. It's neat. And hey, Tom, what's going on? But at the same time, it makes it really hard to make a decision, right? Because they're using that, and they say the Jazz 3 is the way to go, and blah blah blah. Generally speaking, I would go so far as to say, my guess, it's a guess, I would need to check. Zach, I adore you. One quick second, and I will deliciously answer that question. Jimmy Page, I'll bet he used the regular size pick. Jimi Hendrix, regular size pick. Joe Satriani, Steve Vai. The guys that are my ultimate favorite players, just about all use a standard size pick. Something to keep in mind. So that's a great question about the angle of the pick, because the thing is, one of the things that as I'm kind of working on, the idea doing the lawnmower effect with the pentatonic, with the course that I'm not working on. The angle of the pick I use is roughly, if this is 90 degrees, it's roughly about 40 degrees. Not quite 45. Definitely not parallel. It's about 40 degrees. And that just allows me to have this thing. When I first met Paul Gilbert, he used a back set picking angle. And then he later changed it around. He's used what I would refer to as foreset, in that the pick is kind of at the same angle as your hand, versus back set, where it's back, instead of it going like that, it's actually turned around. Neil Sean uses a back set picking angle, and obviously works for him, and obviously worked for Paul before he switched it around. But I did ask him; he just kind of said it felt and sounded better. So that angle is important. But there we go. Come on, Jay, bring it in. Just love these, right? So the idea is, what I'm using the same pick, but picking lighter, and it's making it easier to negotiate the low E string, especially in combination with the A string. This is harder. You get all that. It's kind of growl. But there are times you kind of start to lose the note. That is to say, I was digging in harder with the pick with the palm muting. Softer. So one of the things I'm also working on. Sorry. Getting a really light touch on palm muting and doing runs across different strings. Getting the linear thing going with the right hand, and I found that having a lighter touch, but again with a pick with a little. That's got some bite to it, kind of allows me to split the difference, and I like having a little bit more pick to dig into, because again, one of the things I think for my hand with a jazz 3, you know, kind of there's not quite enough pick for me to grab onto. And the other thing that I do is I use kind of the fleshy part of that first finger there to kind of anchor the pick into my hand. And I'm just really kind of working on getting those bottom two strings. And that spot, that transition, that's a hard one. Because you got that, if you start with a downstroke there, you're going to go down, up, down on the fifth string. You got to get over the top of the fifth string on the way back down to get that down, up, down, up, down, up there on the low E string. So you're on the far side of the fifth string. You can catch it on the way to catch the sixth string. That's again why doing, you know, kind of just repetitively playing these individual things. So I literally will spend time going. I actually love doing that, but what it means is that then, you know, you got to go all the way up and down the neck, hitting every group of 3 notes, working on the finger rolls, and that makes those groups of 4 notes work really well, because there's all these crazy finger rolls. That's say that spot right there. Lots of finger rolls going on there, such that you kind of to be able to kind of get those groups of 4 notes without doing some really quick jump that'll almost always create a little bit of open string noise and create a little bit of a gap there. That finger roll as you're kind of going. Come on. There we go. So being able to take each one of those things. Sorry. I am taking my time really building this, and as I'm kind of hopefully encourage other people to do the same, finding up tempo, that again, that dribbling thing. That I can use that. Because once I can get all those really, really underneath, because the hard part for me is playing 4 notes split across 3 strings. That has taken a lot of time, but I'm kind of pretty close to it. So I'm like, ooh, I can taste it, right? So for me, you know, one of the things that's kind of near and dear to my heart is hopefully inspiring other players to kind of go, look, you know, there are seasons in our guitar playing life where, hey, Griffin, what's going on? I missed you coming in there. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, great further question. Hang on a second. That's hold on. I that drink to reduce the hemoglobin and makes us less desirable. Hang on a second. Uh, and it's only the beginning. What did I miss? Oh, there we go. Hold on. Morning, everyone. What is your opinion of contoured picks to reduce slip? Do you have any tips to reduce slipping? It's a great question. A minute ago, I talked about okay. Hang on. So let me just go through here and read all of this. There you go. Now, what's the best pick? The one you can find. 1 millimeter Tortex, absolutely. Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. So great question. So the thumb is just very slightly pushing the pick up onto the edge of the first finger. And so that is to say it's got a little bit of flex to it in the process of pushing that pick onto the edge of the first finger. And in so doing, the first finger, the pick, not the best camera to show that, but the pick is well, you can actually see this little indentation there. No, you can't. If you could, right about there on the finger is a little indentation of where the pick kind of gets locked in there. So the neat thing about starting to pick really soft, let's see if I can. First of all, most of the time when you pick harder, if I were to pick that hard, especially when you hear a lot of noise as you're crossing strings, so it's by picking softer, I'm like, wow, that's a lot easier. You know, it's I don't always opt for easier, but I'm kind of like, in this particular instance, I'm like, okay, this is markedly different because I'm really wanting to solve some of the pick problems that I have. And I'm just like, if I can do it for myself, I can hopefully do it for others, which is the goal, right? So the idea is that I'm holding it with enough tension that if you tried to pull it out of my hand, I'd be like, no, you can't have it, right? But part of that is really, that's very interesting. Part of that is with the Tortex pick, right, so this is like an old Delrin. No, not Delrin. My eyes are not good enough that I can read what it says on there, even with glasses on. Herco. It's like an old Herco pick, right? Herco. Those of us that remember the old gray Herco picks, I use those for a long time. So they've got kind of a texture on here like this. Dunlop still makes those. And so kind of in case you have a slip factor, my hands, first of all, my skin is generally pretty not greasy. And that includes my fingertips, and I don't sweat very much either. And the sweat that I have isn't particularly corrosive, right? So it means that generally if you were to kind of touch my fingers, they're dry without feeling like bone dry, right? And so thankfully so. When I lived in Los Angeles, there is an aridness about the climate that the skin on the side of my first finger, right where I kind of do this thing where I kind of mute the second string by having the first finger up against it when I'm playing on a high E string, it would literally create a slice in the side of my finger. And believe it or not, that actually hurt when the string would go inside your finger. The tips of the fingers are slightly sensitive. I digress. The point being is that the Tortex pick and holding that little bit of pressure on there, the nature of my skin, which is where I'm going with this, has a tendency. It's funny. There is just a very slight amount of perspiration, and I mean really slight, that I can feel when I hold the pick, where it just kind of like, if you put some plastic up against your skin, you might start to sweat. You know what I'm talking about? Certain fabrics, maybe, at least this is the case with me, certain shirts, the fabric in the shirt, I will sweat because of the fact that the fabric kind of keeps my body from breathing, if you will. There's a shirt that Melissa bought me for stage that looks really cool, but I can't wear it because it's just like it's a sweat tank. The moment I put it on, I'm like, I just kind of want to take it off. So the point being is there is this ever so slight thing where there's just a little bit of that, but just so little that it actually helps hold the pick in place. The other thing is some extra slippery picks, and the surface of these is relatively, it's slick. But the other thing about the writing for the custom, embossing, is that that also adds a little bit of extra grab, maybe just a little bit, and that might actually, in any case, the point being is I don't hold it super hard, but I do hold it hard enough that you're not going to easily grab it out of my hand, but not because I've got it like held down. It's just it's a funny thing. It's that partially just the angle of the way the pick is in there, and the fact that there is a little bit of stick with the first finger. That is to say, I didn't do a very good job of saying it, but there's enough stick with this thing going on like this. There we go. That contributes to the pick staying in place. That's really interesting. All right. Great conversation. Great conversation. The dime bag picks that I have grooves cut into the picks. I'm not sure what Grady Dimes Tech, but used to create grooves. Maybe a box cutter. Finger picking, use nails. Oh, I love it, Zach, with all the great questions. So again, in the pentatonic course that I'm not doing, hey, what's going on? Oh, hang on. Let me. I'm going to come back to your thing there in just a moment. I'm the opposite of you. I sweat easily. No, and so the thing is that if you're a hand sweater, that's a whole different thing. You got to find a pick that isn't going to start slipping around, or like I kind of do, is that I do kind of this thing where, again, I've got it kind of pushed ever so slightly, and I don't have the right lens on here, and I don't have the other camera that's set up isn't a good way to get there. But in the pentatonic course that I'm not working on, I'm sure I would talk about it if I were actually working on it. And so the thing is that helps get it there, because when I'm on stage and I'm in the middle of a set, 2/3 of the way through, I am sweating, right? So that means the fingers start sweating as well. But I don't have a tendency to have super sweaty hands even when the rest of my body sweats. But that is a thing. So, you got to figure that out. There you go. Awesome. Hey, what's going on? Good to see you, my man. I think I saluted you before, but if I didn't, well, I am now. All right. I love that. I missed something there. Okay. There we go. Dunlop Max Grip. So yeah, there are a number of different things, and Dunlop has more picks than you can stake a pick at that are for the different things. And the deal is to go down to a music store and try a bunch of them out. That's one of the great things about Dunlop. The same thing with most reasonable sized stores that carry their slides, is you can actually go through a bunch of slides. That's actually how I started using my favorite. I just kind of went, all right, let me try each one. And I kind of went, oh, that's the one that feels the best on my hand. And that, has kind of become my go-to slide. Just flipping love that. Flows and chubbies. You gotta love, you can tell when something the name came up with by a dude, and there were hopefully no chicks in the room, quote unquote. I apologize to any women that might be watching this, but what kind of guy? Let's call it a chubby. We're back in 7th grade. What do you use? Oh, I use a chubby. What you got? I got a chubby. Oh, gosh. That quickly, huh? I got a few chicken picks, and they don't slip for me. That's good. So, the idea is most importantly, what do they work? I've never had the courage of EVH who would shuffle the pick around. Nope, I'm not going to drop it. So, the interesting thing is that the fingers, right? So in the pentatonic course that I'm not working on, right, so there's all of that. So I love combining the pick and the fingers. So I generally try one. That's pretty funny. All right. So Griffin. All right, boy, this is one of those awkward moments. So, this is what happens when I make the mistake of announcing something, fully believing that I'm going to do it, and then I change my mind, which is a really. I had somebody unfollow me on YouTube because they said something in the comments like, "You say you're going to do something and then you don't do it." I'm like, okay, that was a really good lesson to learn, and of course I still kind of do that. But the pentatonic course, I can't talk about where it's going to come out, but I have a pretty good idea of where it will come out, and I'm getting ready to do a pilot for it, and presuming everything goes as planned. The reality is with 15-minute fundamentals, because I do want to speak to that. Initially, the concept was as follows. I'm going to come back to the right hand in just a moment. The idea was to solve a problem that just about everybody has. Is like, holy cow, I feel like the longer I play, I get further away from the glory days of my youth, or the glory days of, again, we talked about it today, you know, the Trinity. There's the kind of noodling. We start off kind of noodling, kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to make something happen. The actual practicing, and then the woodshedding, because the woodshedding is informed practicing that we kind of go, oh, let me do something with this now, right? And then that woodshedding, you see the direct growth from the practice to the woodshedding. This is what I've experienced in my own playing. I'm like, right, I forgot about that, because I've been practicing, but I have not been woodshedding. Woodshedding, you kind of go, yeah. It allows you to have an internal confidence where you kind of go, okay, I got this. And it changes your perspective when you pick up the guitar. And there's practiced confidence, and then there's woodshedded confidence. It's a totally different thing. And it's much here as it is anywhere else, because when you're actually in woodshed mode, you got a little extra fire in the furnace, and that matters, man. It just does. So the point being is helping guitar players at least have some things in their practice furnace, if you will, that it kind of, you can just go in and stoke the coals every day. And the idea was to create a workout that you would do for 15 minutes every day, 5 days a week, so that you're treading water enough that you're not falling behind. Actually, the reality is not only that, if they're practiced at the right tempo, you're building your muscle memory, and there's going to be what I call spillover, where the muscle memory you're building and reinforcing every day by just running them underneath your fingertips, when you go to play it faster, as opposed to like, hey, I'm just doing my dribbling / golden tempo drills with these things, that muscle memory, when you go to play faster, you're like, oh my word, I can put all these things together. And I'm absolutely seeing that happen in my own playing. So the idea was, as I kind of scratched the surface, I realized at one point or another, the same workout isn't enough. And I kind of realized, as I kept trying to cram all the things that I felt, if I'm going to call it fundamentals, there are all these things that are fundamentals. And I finally went, there's 5 workouts that you ideally practice, each one 5 days a week for 15 minutes. And the idea is that there's up-ramping for that stuff that you do, such that, you know, you've got to get those things underneath your fingertips, and then we're going to practice them together. So the whole thing about the 15-minute fundamentals is I will be on screen. It will be on demand, asynchronous learning, but going through those things like in 15 minutes, boom, you know, one exercise, you know, and there'll be some screen overlays. I have a very clear idea about what and how I want to do it, such that, you know, even if you're still don't have it totally memorized visually, on the screen there will be the screen overlays for the pattern, so you can do it if you need to look at the screen, just as a little bit of reminder. For example, pattern number 1, 2, 3 of the minor pentatonic. That stretch on the 3rd string there for some folks is just, it's a little awkward. So some people, you know, may have a little issue remembering that. The other thing is, when you get up to pattern number 5, it looks a lot like pattern number 1, but it's not. And so having the visual of that will be helpful for some people on ramping this. And the idea is to take as many people along on the journey as is possible and really create a quality experience. And I was kind of like, well, there's more stuff that I think people need and want to know so they can have a really good understanding. And although I haven't made a final decision, I'm probably going to group things into a scales day, or a pentatonic day, and a modes day, and a triads and inversions day. I mean, the deal is the ability to go. Having different. Sorry. Different inversions that you can walk through on a daily process to run through them. Like you will just see your chord playing just go. Phew. And so part of this is giving people the stuff like, yeah, I know I need to have this. And the other part is going, I have a pretty good idea of what guitar players know they need to know, and then the stuff that they don't necessarily know they need to know. But inversions, being able to own your inversions and just kind of go to a shape because you know the sound of it, and you're like, oh, and all of a sudden you found your fans went, I went to that without thinking, but it was the shape that I wouldn't have known how to play otherwise. That informed playing is kind of the outcome of practicing these different types of inversions. And actually having a regular daily process where you can kind of go through all that. And in turn, I'm going down the rabbit trail, but you asked a great question, is that those 5 different types of workouts, for people like myself, I will be inclined to go through all 5. But there'll be some people that really just want to go deep on the scale. So maybe let's do the scale workout all 5 days of the week. Or, my suggestion is for people that want to go deep will be to do 3 of the 5 days of working on their featured thing, or maybe 2 of the 3 days, and then the other, or 2 of the 5 days, and the other days flip that around. And there you have it. There you go. In any case, okay, that's so funny. I love this. Gosh darn it. And in a minute, I got to get ready for my teaching day. But okay, so I was talking about this. Let me get to these real quick. So the idea is generally speaking, when I'm just working on that stuff, I'm doing a thing where I'm using a combination of the thumb and the first finger. I love it. Detail even. That's awesome. Come on. But the other thing is there's a bunch of times that I spend time... Hang on, that overlay is going to go away in just a second. Come on, go. There we go. That stuff is just great, So that'll be some of that in the course that I'm not doing, right? The other thing that's going to be in the course that I'm not doing is there'll be some rhythm stuff. For example, Jimmy Page in E in pattern number 3, the minor pentatonic. Two of the greatest rock and roll riffs ever. Pattern number 3 of the E minor pentatonic is like, okay, got it, right? So the idea of showing people how, kind of, well, wait a second, this is basically... All right. Right, so although that was kind of blending in some Mixolydian there, you begin to kind of go, holy cow, Jimmy Page liked it. So you just start farting around in that area of the neck and kind of go, oh, I got this. Oh, that's big. I can't. They play it, go off the edge of the net because they don't want to do it. Oh boy, it's been a few years. Pattern number 3 of the minor pentatonic of E. I digress. All right. Oh boy, thanks for that, Spencer. You are just awesome. There we go. So down the Led Zeppelin trail we go. So I mean, there's so much, except for that, there's so much classic rock is written around also. Sorry. So, just kind of letting people in on that. And now I live in N. Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, it was so easy, I kind of went off the neck with it. All right. So, okay. My old stomping ground. Okay, okay, good. All right. Practice. Gear Garage. Student guitar amp recommended. Use a Boss Katana. Now, are you asking what I'm recommending or what you're recommending? First of all, the Katana, I have not tried the Katana 3, I think they're out. The Katana 2, I love. It's amazing. The other thing that I've got over here is the Catalyst 2.0. I really wanted it to be Catalyst 1.0, which I absolutely love that amp. This amp is a little different, but once I kind of got a chance to hang out with it, I love this one too. So the Catalyst is a great amp. The Katana is a great amp. They both work extremely well and are loud enough you can play in a live setting, and they're great. Absolutely great. So and if you're making a recommendation, absolutely the Katana was developed by a really dear friend that is no longer with us, and just really was a guy that just kind of was a dear friend. In any case, all right. Let's see. Let me make sure. There we go. Catalyst. There we go. Let me make sure I've got all the questions here because I need to get ready for my day of teaching. First of all, thank you. There's a little bit of a thing here that Zach, you asked, and great questions, my man. Really great questions. I didn't actually answer that outright. So I generally, once the pick starts to get worn, because I've got a bag of them, and I kind of can tell that it's like, I'm going to hear the notchy sound of. That is to say, once the pick starts to get worn on the edge, you'll hear, versus there's a natural, but when the pick is worn, you'll kind of hear that in addition to the sound of the pick going between the grooves, you'll hear the notch part of the pick. That is if I go like this. And I'm purposely kind of sawing up and down. In between a groove, you won't hear the pick. You're just hearing the pick going back and forth on the strings. That's a really creepy sound. I kind of like that in a really weird way. But you won't hear the catch. But when you can hear the catch and pulling this pick like that, where you're kind of going down the edge of the pick, and it starts to get catches, that's when I traditionally will get rid of it. But I am enough of a hoarder. They'll be like, well, it's only got a few of those, so I'll keep it around. In any case, you made a comment about absolutely. Look at that. Okay, so Zach, in closing, the pentatonic is as the name implies, a 5-tone scale. The modes are based on the 7 tones of the major scale. If you kind of start off the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th degrees of the major scale, you get major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, minor, Locrian, major. Unlike the major scale and its relative modes, only 2 patterns, quote unquote, of the pentatonic scale that we like to think of as we lay out the 5 patterns of the minor pentatonic scale. Pattern number 1 is commonly referred to as the minor pentatonic, and pattern number 2, that is, if you started the minor pentatonic off its 2nd note, that shape is referred to as the major pentatonic. So the point being is that if you took each one of those, pattern number 1 and pattern number 2, and laid them over a common root, the minor pentatonic is a 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. And the major pentatonic is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 1. And respectively, you can play the minor pentatonic over Dorian, Phrygian, and minor because it shares those same scale degree numbers. And you can play the major pentatonic over major, Lydian, and Mixolydian. So that is to say, if my chord progression was... Or, so right. Not the greatest tone. Over Mixolydian. We'll leave it there for now. Okay, in any case, Zach, great points, great questions. Everybody, thank you so much. Oh, so here's the interesting thing is there are some really cool wood, avocado. So the wood picks, so the only reason I don't have any wood picks is nobody has, maybe I have one in here, nobody, pretty much all these picks have been given to me. People send me picks and they do things. The wood picks, first of all, have a, wait for it, woody tone. And the neat thing about that, it is a very kind of, it's a pretty sound, and they feel really good in the fingers, right? But I know they can be expensive, and I remember somebody showing me like a $25 guitar pick, and I went like, that seems like an awful lot of money to spend on a pick that I'm probably going to lose in about a day. But sonically, I think they're really cool, and I love that, as you pointed out, they're aggressive, but yet at the same time, there's this part where there's that transient of the pick just hitting the string in contact, if you will, the way it kisses the string, and that sound, trying to hit it in the same spot, but the different textures of the pick will have a different, if you will, tapping sound to it. And I remember the wood pick that I think is buried in here somewhere. It had a nice tap to it, right? So it felt woody and organic on the strings. All right. Spencer, that means so much. You made my day. Wow. And I really, really, really mean that. That warms, wait for it, as awkward as it sounds. This is an actual word, cockles. I'd love to know who it is that introduced the word cockles and with a straight face. It warms the cockles of my heart, but literally the feeling is the blood flows to said cockles, and that happens, and it absolutely did. So thank you. PG-14, I love it. Learning Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven. Hang on a second. From the beginning to verse 2, 90% accurately, 1.5 hours, 5 days a week, 2 weeks. I love that. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the inspiration. There it is. There we go. Gosh darn it. I spent a little bit of time working on that this week, just abstractly. All right, so the thing about that, gosh darn it, I'm getting pulled in here. The minor pentatonic, just a little micro lesson. That was coined by the great grandfather of the guy who named the pig a pig Chubby. The cool thing about he goes to that F over the F chord. So the deal is, the thing about the minor pentatonic, it's got a 1, flat 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, and a 1. So if you can think of your resolving at the 1, at the 3, and resolving at the 5, blah 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 blah, exclamation point, blah 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 blah, exclamation point, blah 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 blah, exclamation point. Or you can think of it as a sentence, and that's the punctuation at the end of the sentence. So the sequence is and the idea is that regardless of what riff, there are players that pick up the pentatonic and they just intuitively know how to resolve, and there's other people who's like, it just sounds like I'm running scales. So the trick to solving that problem is being able to identify that 1, flat 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1, and flat 3 that's in the scale. And finding those notes, and I realize I have no delay or reverb on, and it sounds ever so slightly naked, but that's kind of okay. But you know, and generally speaking, you know, resolving to the 1. But the thing is, what Jimmy does there, he does it there as well as he goes to the F over the F chord, and it's such a genius thing, because whether he knew it here intellectually over the, I'm gonna me in this lick, I'm just gonna have to spend like Zach a bunch of time playing it. So, truth be told, besides butchering Jimmy Page there, this neck is just a little tiny bit deeper, and it's got enough arch to it that it makes that little run there a little bit hard. So this is kind of the interesting thing is that one of the reasons that with my students, I frequently am on them about using a classical hand position. One of the things that happens when you wrap around the top of the neck is you lose some of the extension. And depending on the shape of the neck, you sometimes have an inability. Now, this, for whatever reason, that riff has always been just, it doesn't like me, but it just means I just need to practice it more because it's one of the coolest riffs in rock. Let's see how it goes over here. At about the same size neck. So I don't have the exact cadence with which he's playing. It's pretty much the right notes, but the idea is he's going to that F there, and well, and this is the whole point. It's like Jimmy Page kind of went to this. It's perfect, and as opposed to he went there and he's like. No, I think really what happened was Jimmy Page was soloing and he just knew to go to that note. I think because he was a genius, right? And so and my takeaway is as follows, is that he was a studio guy, which means that I don't know for a fact, but it meant that he probably knew enough about music to be able to have some level of reading capacity, although in those early rock sessions, I don't know how much reading. There we go. Imagine that. He probably played the lick right, too. The point being is that F there, it's following the chord changes. And so this gets us to this last point, and then I do have to go, is that generally speaking, even if the chords are changing, I'm purposely playing a D major, which is going to give an F sharp there. I can't play that lick. Closer. All right, so the point being, though, is that going back to our, if you will, kind of an A Dorian, because I'm playing that D major chord there. The minor pentatonic, oh gosh, you can just hang on the 1 flat 3 or the 5, the 1 kind of being the kind of no-brainer, can't go wrong because it has the really kind of the appropriate resolution for the overarching, we're going to label as the tonic chord. That is, say if I play this chord, that's the tonic chord. But any of those notes are good to resolve to, and the great thing about that is that's the 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, and 1 of the minor pentatonic. So the deal is, so say over C, E, G, there we go. So that chord's got a G in it. That's C, E, G. Well, you can be playing that because it's the tonal center for this thing. So if I play it against A, sounds pretty good. So yeah, so again, so in theory, that A argues with the 5 of the C chord, which is a G, C, E, G. And it definitely argues with the 1 of the G chord, because A would be its 2. But I could literally go. And somehow it works. So that means if I go. So I'm resolving to the 1 there and kind of hitting the bass note of each chord. So because it's the tonic chord or the Even though it doesn't sit perfectly, the 1 and the flat 3, now we're going to do the 5. That's not so pretty. But that's partially because it's the octave in which I'm playing it. This guy's right there. If I played it there, that's the. There you go. So there's the E. So that's the 1 flat 3 5 A C and E. That's the E. Sound bad against the D. It's that when I play it right there, it's a little ugly, that major second. So voicings matter, absolutely. So I believe his son played it. Gotta love that. Yeah, I can't play it. He does some little articulations. 5. That's another good reason to think about the note names. If I can kind of, I keep wanting to bend to the 1s. Like, well, it's not the 1. So what is it? Oh, it's the 5. Point being is that F. I was thinking about this because in the midst of the pentatonic course that I'm not working on, if you kind of know why that's cool. So basically, in the key of A minor, that's the 6 chord, that's the 5 chord, that's the 4 as it relates to the kind of. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And the idea is that basically is outlined. And so he goes to that because now, interestingly enough, against what I said before, is that in theory you could kind of play any of the notes of the tonic chord, the 1 flat 3 5 A C and E, against any of the chords that are in the common key. But in particular, he kind of got there, probably went, and bottom probably threw down the 6. Said, Jimmy, just play that a half step higher, would you? And was like, okay. So the point being, who knows? Obviously, none of us were there, but my guess is Jimmy just kind of knew to go to that F, and it's just so perfect. So, implicit in that is the 1, as I kind of demonstrated there, like, hey, landing on the 1 flat 3 or the 5 of, in this case, an A minor chord out of the minor pentatonic. That's the kind of wheedle, wheedle, wheedle. 1 flat 3. Or the 5, those are great ways to go blah, 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 punctuation. Blah, 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 punctuation. Blah, 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 punctuation. And so it's a way to instantly improve your soloing because you go, oh, those are the notes that I made before. Maybe I didn't know. 1, 5, 3, 5, A, C, and E. Done. All right. Oh, wow. Okay. Cockle's going there, bud. Thank you very much. With great pleasure. Thank you. Here's the thing is I don't necessarily do this for feedback, but that doesn't mean that feedback doesn't matter. And certainly, okay, Adam, great to see you. Thank you so much. Really a pleasure. I got to run too. Gosh darn it. So I hope that has been half as much fun for you as it was for me. Really appreciate your hanging out. I look forward to seeing you a week from today, next Saturday. So again, thanks for hanging out. And I planned on doing an hour show, but here we are, 2 hours and 11 minutes later, having a great time. Ron Martin, great to see you. Hello, my friend. And we did do a little bit of trivia. So let's see. Let's close out with a trivia. All right. Let's see. What producer produced Led Zeppelin and Joe Satriani? What producer produced Led Zeppelin and Joe Satriani? Oh, Chris Alexander for the win. Boom. Well done, my friend. Glenn was obviously Andy's brother. Glenn Johns, I believe both Andy and Glenn produced. I'll need to double check my liner notes, but I think they both produced The Who. The Andy Johns obviously produced a bunch of the Led Zeppelin stuff. And also, I don't know if he was the only Led Zeppelin producer, but I know that. Andy Johns, brother to Glenn Johns, produced The Extremist, which was a very interesting thing because, if you haven't heard Joe talk about how that record was made, Andy's got a whole process. And, each one of us as guitar players, we kind of have our way of doing things. And when you work with a producer like that, they kind of have their way of doing things. And it was really interesting. The great thing is Joe is a lovely human being, but he's also a very smart musician. And a smart musician kind of goes, well, if I'm going to hire Andy Johns to do this, I need to understand the Andy Johns way as opposed to make Andy Johns do the Joe Satriani way. That's what a smart musician does, because they're kind of like, I can be the big guy and just kind of, I'm the guy writing the checks, or I can be like, Andy Johns made, some of the most important albums of rock come together. What can he do if he kind of rebakes the Satriani cake? And so I'd be very curious to ask Joe at some point what things he does in his recording now that he learned from the sessions of working with Andy Johns. It'd be very interesting to know that. The Satch tapes, it's been a while since I watched them, and so I don't know. Yes, just the interesting thing is that I know that Joe, as I understand it, Andy didn't let Joe use any effects, right? So you're recording your guitars dry as a bone, right? Again, the vibe of... Now, what I don't know is if, whether or not there were any effects on the stereo bus, right? But the thing is, the ability to kind of make a... make something happen with nothing on it versus... last run. For those of us that spend a lot of time playing with delay, to turn that off, you're like, my crutch! It's always interesting to kind of go, this is what I do. What would happen if I had to totally change it up? All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a great one. I look forward to seeing you next week, and enjoy the day. Thanks again for the kind words, hanging out, and keeping me on my toes. That was a lot of fun, just fun stuff. All right, you take care, and